My mom, my mom wanted to see a copy of the recording, so
Did she?
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. She just started a new job today, so she's like, I can't attend, and she'd been at home for the last couple of weeks, so it was just, she was like, okay, whatever, get a recording if you can, please share it. And I was like, okay, I got you.
So Simba is new to the group? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, yeah, Simba. We met Simba through the new advisory committee.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes, and was introduced through some connections to the dean, and he's actually, that's something we'll need to speak about.
Yeah.
I guess a little bit later, and I'm wondering if we could call like an impromptu meeting tonight. Even I know this is a lot of work, but just to discuss the PERG application.
Okay, but remember, I need to get that letter out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
We can work.
Folks are joining.
Yeah, nice. Welcome everybody. We're just gonna give folks another 5 or so minutes, and then we can begin.
Okay. Hi, folks.
Hey, everyone. Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Maureen. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Read my t-shirt.
Yes, I'm reading it.
I love it. See mine?
I understood the assignment.
Yeah, baby.
Big fan of the shirt.
So for everybody who just joined in, I know we have about 15 or so people registered, so we'll just give people about 5 or so minutes, and then we can begin. I know the caucus has quite a bit to get through, so just an extra 5 minutes. Thanks.
Jane, you're doing the land acknowledgement, right?
Sorry?
You're doing the land acknowledgement, right?
Okay. I didn't have that, but I think I should. Thanks for reminding me.
Let me see. If you, I guess York has its own, but do you have one, right?
No, could you kindly share that with me?
I can only show you mine, so
Yeah,
I will.
That's okay.
I can do this. Not sure how I'm doing this is yet. Give me a sec. Done. Oh,
You go to one?
yeah. Mine is a bit, I'm going to drop it in the Black Caucus group. It's a bit long, so we could. Anyway. Good morning.
Okay, I think we have a good number of people. Let us begin. Before we begin, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement, and then we can move on to welcome and introductions. So I'm going to take you through the land acknowledgement by first asking you to orient yourself to the environment around you, to the land that you sit, eat, make love on, raise children on, and from which you learn and grow. You are at St. James campus, 10 minutes away from Lake Ontario. This land is treaty land, and you are all the treaty people as a result. Long before the settlers came to this land, there were nations people living here, the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas, who were in treaty with each other so that they could live in peace and harmony with each other. These relationships existed for tens of thousands of years. One such treaty, the dish with one spoon, committed these people, the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas, to ensure that they took from the land and its resources only what they needed. This was a shared and harmonious free relationship. Since then, there have been other treaties, the Two-Row Wampum and the Treaty 13. These treaties invite you and myself as settlers, visitors, and guests to join in solidarity with the First Peoples in caring for the land and each other. It invites you to be committed to open yourself to hearing and learning about Indigenous wisdom and culture, and to actively participate in the decolonization, abolition project to repair the damage done by colonialism, genocide, cultural genocide and its afterlife, the violence that has resulted in murdered and missing Indigenous women, a rise in Indigenous youth incarceration, and Indigenous youth in care and youth suicides on First Nation reserves. The acknowledgement that residential were actually murder factories as well. Social workers have all historically been part of the problem. That is one of the reasons this program is in the midst of indigenizing and decolonizing our curriculum so we don't continue the harm. That is why we ask you to stand in solidarity with the First Peoples and their justice movements and insurgency and their land back claims and moves with our program as we work towards repairing the damage and healing ourselves and this land. Okay, thank you. I'd like to begin and by saying good morning, everybody. I hope everyone had a good long weekend and we're refreshed for the week ahead of us. So a very well welcome to this exciting dialogue that has been hosted by the EUC Equity Committee, where today we'll get to find out about the EUC Black Caucus and get to know them. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Jane Lumumba, and I'm a second-year PhD student at the Faculty of Environment and Urban Change, and I will be the moderator for today's very exciting dialogue. And I'd like to take this opportunity to first welcome the Dean of Environment and Urban Change, Professor Alice Hovoka, members of the Equity Committee, faculty, staff, students, and all other guests. And secondly, the stars of the day, I want to take this opportunity as well to welcome our speakers. A very warm welcome to Natalie Wood, Nati Zamisa, and Camille Turner. And I also just want to apologize to Nati Zamisa, whose name was spelled wrongly on the information that went out. It's actually Zamisa and not Zamisi, so apologies for that. Before I open up the floor to begin our main session, I know that the caucus has quite a bit to discuss with us today. I want to ensure that we introduce our speakers first, and then we can go through some housekeeping rules. So if you don't mind, we can start with Nati Zamisa, who will be one of our speakers. You can introduce yourselves, then Camille, and then Natalie, and then we can go to the housekeeping rules and then begin our session. Thank you. Nati.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jane, and I appreciate the note on my name. I was excited to see a correction made in our presentation. But anyways, hi folks, I'm Nati. I did my honors double major in labor and environmental studies in my undergraduate. I have a passion right now for housing related stuff, and that's where I'm currently doing my work. I co-founded the York Village Housing Association in 2018. I became a member with the Affordable Housing Committee right around that time. And recently we incorporated and we are operating the York Nonprofit Housing Society Cooperative. And I'm currently the program director for Housing Ontario University Students Equitably, or House Ontario. And right now I'm also doing my MA in Black Studies, Theories of Race and Racism in the Faculty of Social and Political Thought. And my goal is to theorize around Black radical sociality and solidarity in blockchain systems, so to speak, or using blockchain technology. So thank you for the floor. I'll pass it over to, I think, Camille. Camille, I believe you're muted.
Oh dear, sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all. I'm Camille Turner. I have just defended my dissertation. Thank you. Yeah, 7 long years, and I can't believe that the rock that I've been carrying for all that time is finally, finished. So my work, I'm an artist, and my work is uses arts-based methods to confront Canada's innocent landscape. So I looked at 19 slave ships that were constructed in 18th century Newfoundland. And I'm going on to a postdoc at University of Toronto in the Daniels faculty. Yeah. Natalie, on to you.
Thanks, Camille, and again, congratulations. So I'm a Trinity-born, Toronto-based visual and media artist, a PhD student in this faculty, EUC at York University. I'm also a tenured professor at George Brown College. I specialize there in teaching social innovation and social economies. I'm a co-founder with Camille and Nathy of the EUC Black Caucus, and Maureen is here as well. I'm a fellow at Black Lives Matter's Wild Seed Center for Art and Activism, and founder of other things, Blue Devil Posse, GBC Social Innovation Hub. My PhD research is a research creation project. I'm in my 3rd year right now, and I just kind of switched my focus, switched my focus a little bit, and I'm looking at Black queer resistance in Caribbean carnivals. That's me.
Okay, thank you very much, Camille, Natalie, and Nati. And before I open up for the main session, I just want to go over some small housekeeping rules. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end of all the speakers, just for about 10 minutes. And during that time, please feel free to use the raise hand function. And during the session, also feel free to use the chat box, and I'll do my best to monitor and flag key points and key questions that are raised on the chat. So we'll go ahead and we will invite our first speaker, Camille, and I'm the one doing the slides. So let me share my screen and then we can start.
Remember to unmute this time. All right.
Let me just get my screen sorted and then we can start. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay.
In 2020, the global pandemic sent the world into lockdown, and I began my dissertation. My work confronts colonial Canada's racially innocent narratives by unsilencing its entanglements in the transatlantic trade of enslaved Africans through the story of 19 slave ships constructed in 18th century Newfoundland. As I began to uncover this violent past, the silences produced to obscure it, and the silences that were produced to obscure it, events in the present jarred me into an understanding that Blackness is the ground on which humanity is constructed. And this ontological reality is not past, it is very much present. On May 25th, 2020, a Minnesota policeman knelt on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. It was a painful time to be a Black person living on planet Earth. I felt sickened and drained of energy. I just wanted to curl up and go to sleep. As Tupac said, "Wake me when I'm free." Protests around the world exploded onto the streets. Monuments commemorating a history of white supremacy were toppled. The term anti-Blackness became known beyond Black communities. Although I was exhausted, I realized that this is definitely not the time to collapse. This is time to push for much needed change, systemic change in social institutions where whiteness is centered. Robin DiAngelo, the writer of White Fragility, explains, "We have organized society to reproduce and reinforce our racial interests and perspectives. Further, we're centered in all matters deemed normal, universal, benign, neutral, and good." My response to this moment was to join with other EUC students to form the Black Caucus, a group demanding change. We were encouraged and supported by groups such as EUC Equity Committee and FESA. We stand on the shoulders of previous groups such as ACE and numerous organizations who for decades agitated for change within our faculty. I want to particularly point to the importance of ACE, because without ACE, who advocated for scholarships for grad students, I would not have been here. So what does it mean to be the EUC Black Caucus? It means that we're challenging the way that EUC is organized along racial lines. We call for a recognition that systemic racism is central to issues of the environment. Robert Bullard tells us that race and class map closely to vulnerability. We call out the colorblind curriculum. This curriculum is not neutral, it centers whiteness. We call for systemic change beyond the performance of checking boxes for EDI. We applaud the hiring of 2 new Black faculty. This is a wonderful beginning to addressing the systemic issues that were identified 30+ years ago. But these Black faculty members did not create these issues, and they cannot address them alone. It takes everyone doing their part, especially those who benefit from this system. As the Black Caucus, we take it upon ourselves to dream what it may look like in the future for students coming behind us. What will it feel like when the work of Dorsida Taylor, Adrienne Hollis, Françoise Vergès, and Robert Bullard are taught to undergraduates, not as part of EDI requirements, but because their work is actually foundational to the field. And since it is impossible to address environmental justice without examining the centrality of race. And by the way, Dorsida Taylor, award-winning environmental sociologist who specializes in environmental justice and studies racism in the environmental movement, is currently Senior Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Yale. She was interviewed at FES in the 1990s. She was not hired. What might it look like at EUC today if she had been hired back then? If EUC was a space where justice is practiced, what would that look like? And what would it feel like? And who would we see around us? And what would it mean for future scholarship? Thank you.
Thanks, Camille. I'll go next. So what is EUC? So EUC Black Caucus represents and advocates for the collective interests of Black EUC students, graduates, undergraduates, and as well recent graduates in all matters of departmental policy and action at York University. We seek to build community among Black EUC students, faculty, and the larger university with consideration for the diverse experiences and interests of Black students. And above all, we work to optimize the environment within which Black EUC students and recent grads develop both professionally and personally. So that's our official statement of who we are. When we think about, or when we talk about who, the folks who were part, the graduate students and the undergrad students who are part of EUC Black Caucus, beginning in the fall of 2020, which is when we started. We've got students such as Vivian, Bediako, Kesha, Fevrier, Demoy, Zena, Balikiusu, Maureen, Leroy, Cyrus, myself, Camille Turner, and for you to know that we've got two Vanier scholars amongst our group. We've got the founder of the Freedom School, we've got founding member of BLM Canada and the Wild Seed Program, and we've got new, other new folks such as, and also we have visual and media artists in the group. In 2021, we had new students join us. Nathi, who's here speaking, who will be speaking next. Tiffany, Amon, Kafia, and recently in the last few months, Livy has joined us, Nastasia has joined us, Nazra, Anab, and Simba. Welcome, Simba. So could you move to the next slide, Jane, please? So in the fall of 2020, we requested a meeting with the faculty and presented a list of 9 proposals that we wish to see adopted within EUC. And essentially, these proposals were meant to address the pervasiveness of anti-Black racism within the EUC program. So here's a list of the 9. So we wanted a commitment to reparations in education, knowing full well that education's origins were in white supremacy, and we wanted the program to make a commitment to address anti-Blackness. We want a strategic plan, right, to address anti-Black racism, and embedded in that is an audit. We wanted an audit to really determine where were Black students, what was going on in terms of Black curriculum that included Black experiences, histories, etc. We really wanted to have a recruitment and a retaining of Black students, since Black students tend to, there are statistics everywhere that talk about Black students being one of the first groups to drop out of school. We want spaces and pathways to EUC for Black students in Black communities. We want annual mandatory unconscious bias training. We want to see Black hires in faculty, and we talked about a Black cluster hire because we saw that OCAD-U, who created their Black cluster hire, but also did some very strenuous work to change the culture of the organization and the policies, etc., were much more successful of having systemic change and in basically becoming more innovative as we move into the future. And we want to support Black EUC students and faculty. So Jane, you could turn, next slide. So these groups are us, EUC Black students, after the death of George Floyd and Kaczynski Paquette, we realized that our silence, we truly believed in what Audre Lorde has written, that our silence would not protect us. So we've chosen to organize. So as a group, there were lists of actions that we engaged in. And they actually fit 9 lists of actions, which is interesting. And while I was putting this together last night, I thought, oh my gosh, we have done so much in such a little bit of time. So starting, we became an official club, okay? We're now recognized as a club. We meet bi-weekly and we have our own social media presence, etc. And we encourage laughter, responsible wine drinking, right, Maureen? And all sorts of other fun things. Okay, we conducted primary research. So we created a survey and we distributed it amongst Black students in the program to make sure that, our actions are informed by, actual real experiences. And let me see. So the survey continues to inform our actions and is represented in our 9 proposals. So in the interest of time, I wouldn't go through that. The third is we engaged in hiring of Black faculty. So we work towards, engaging in a process with the dean and with the faculty to look at hiring Black faculty members, new Black faculty members. We had Black Caucus students sit on the hiring committee. In the process, we responded to the pause in the hiring. And we were part of the process that successfully hired 1 of 3 to be hired Black faculty members. And I'm referring to Dr. Muna Ali, who was hired in summer of 2021. We took part in the process of hiring the equity research assistants and, ensuring that the job description met with the need as requested. So Jane Lumumba is the research assistant right now. We had hoped that these positions would be focused on developing Black students' capacities and for mentorship opportunities, but we note that instead, this position is being used to support EUC's anti-Black racism response and Black inclusion efforts, okay? So we supported the EUC Equity Strategy, and there's several key points here, and I don't think I will go through that. Maybe, in particular, to support faculty and staff to self-educate and acknowledge anti-Black racism and its corollary, the post-traumatic slave syndrome, and, to ensure that faculty can interrogate positionalities and unconscious bias. With respect to the EUC Black Advisory Committee, we have now 2 students involved in the committee. We've engaged in several letter writing campaigns. I think the dean will know about this very well, right? Certainly to spur the hiring of Black faculty, but also many other issues, including some complaints that around anti-Black racism that students reached out to us to say that they were experiencing some significant anti-Black racism in classrooms. So the complaints itself, so the next one is the anti-Black racism complaints. We are in the process of addressing concerns around incidents of anti-Black racism in the classroom and the culture of indifference to anti-Black racism as experienced by Black EUC students. In the fall of 2021, there were some complaints made. We conducted an investigation. We met with EUC, JESA in August of 2021. We consulted with students in September of 2021. This resulted in an open letter to the faculty, and the dean received this letter in January 2022, which you responded to. The EUC Black Inclusion Action Plan, as Dean Havoka states, our 9 proposals have informed the creation of the EUC Black Inclusion Action Plan running from 2020 to 2025. This is in alignment with York University's Action Plan on Black Inclusion and York University's Addressing Anti-Black Racism, a framework on Black inclusion. So EUC is now, Next page. We continue to pressure the faculty to include new items on the Black Inclusion Action Plan. Some of these items include access to aggregated data on the experiences of Black students. We're hoping for breakdown in terms of demographics. There is still more Black faculty to be hired. There is a lack of accountability in the action plan framework. Right now, there are beautiful words on with some timelines, but how can we make this more accountable? Lack of inclusion in terms of students' feedback, and in particular, Black Caucus and EUC. We are really interested in ensuring that there is a creation of an anonymous complaint system to track incidents of anti-Black racism and to help, the change. Training for faculty to have difficult discussions around anti-Black racism, including the understanding of critical race studies. We would like to see an update to the graduate and undergraduate handbook regarding how to engage with in-class discussion about race, racism, and Black experience. And the other piece is about free, unpaid, emotional, and physical labor. So to end my piece, we're grateful at the response of the Dean and Faculty Council to our concerns. And trust me, we are grateful because, we have been in many situations where there has been no response, right? So thank you for that. However, we're troubled that what we're seeing may actually be theater rather than systemic change. We are heartened by the new hires in the ABR framework, Anti-Black Racism Framework Action Plan, and we see that as a great start. We are, however, concerned by the absence of an experienced and knowledgeable anti-racism specialist to drive this process. Research in this field shows that EDI strategies often fail. The absence of this person, the experienced person, knowledgeable person, has put more pressure on us as students to fill this role at the expense of our schoolwork, fears that this may negatively impact our future employment or our future educational attainments. This is emotional and mental labor that is being done for free. Most importantly, we're not experts in educational systems change, and we're not sure that after we leave, this work would not disappear into an archive and everything goes back to normal. Our hope is not just for inclusion, but for systems change that decenters whiteness in academia. So Nathy, your turn. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Camille, too. I'm speaking about, we had a great list of accomplishments, but I'm going to speak about some of the challenges that we faced. And I'm going to start by touching on, some of those survey results initially, and the challenges that were kind of, pre-2020, pre the formation of the Black Caucus. And some of those challenges included students were resorting to taking courses related to race, racism, and racialization outside of the faculty for a bunch of reasons, whether it's conflicting with their course, they didn't know that courses were available, whatever it might be. Some students noted that they could complete entire graduate or undergraduate programs in EUC without encountering Black literature by Black scholars. And some students reported seeking communities of Black scholars outside of the faculty. Some reported a lack of relevant mentorship for Black EUC students or Black faculty to support them. Kind of pointed towards a lack of resources for Black students in general. And down the pipeline, some reported an absence of scholarships or research funding opportunities for Black studies focuses. Some reported a reluctance and or discomfort amongst faculty discussing race and or using the term Black, which was hinting towards a lack of training for faculty, specifically training around moderating critical discussions about race, racism, and racialization. And this is all stuff that we just learned, but it's not new information. According to UFA in 2020, approximately 2.3% of York's faculty was Black, operating in a community that, as of 2016, the Toronto Census Neighborhood Profile is reportedly made up of 19% Black people. In Toronto, it's 7.5% Black people. There were TAs who reported TAing course where race is a central issue in the context of environmental issues, but somehow not the main issue, something that was treated as a side issue. And it's notable because it required that they spend a lot of time, energy inserting what was missing into their seminars and tutorials, a kind of invisible labor and a weight of potentially deterring from, the course learnings and concerns around that. And finally, a lack of safe spaces and or means to address anti-Black racism and its correlative traumas. So after forming, this safe space, after forming the Black Caucus, there were some different challenges, and I think Natalie touched on some of them, but really it boiled down to a feeling of not being heard or adequately heard or being selectively heard. We're settling for 3 Black faculty members when we're pushing for 5. Again, I'm thinking about that 2.3%, seeing some of our recommendations and not all of them in the ABR framework. And, we understand we're managing a double bind, right? We're relying on the faculty to make these changes, and we're also pushing against the faculty to make these changes. We understand that the faculty have their own walls and barriers, and we can understand that. We're also managing uncertainty. We're waiting on details, and Natalie mentioned regarding pauses on hiring, but also maybe the absence of certain courses and, the things that we pursue. And there are gaps in communication, and there are in every organization, and those gaps are just uniquely correlated to our labors and coincidentally our mental health, right? And that's one thing. We noted that there's an inability to implement mandatory anti-Black racism or unconscious bias training for faculty, and we get that we're balancing multiple stakeholder groups, whether it's management, labor unions, and Black students opposing needs and their interests, and some limitations there. We're learning from Black faculty like Carl James and the Faculty of Education that specifically mandatory training is, sometimes ineffective, and for a plethora of reasons, leading to some kind of indifferences and issues in implementation. But more importantly, understanding that measuring the applications and outcomes of these training is extremely difficult. And Rosanna brought this up in our advisory committee. But how do we see these trainings implemented in the classroom setting, right? How do we measure the difference from before to now without a baseline that isn't simply, the Black Caucus's research or Black students' pain? We noted that there's a lack of accountability measures. And again, Natalie touched on this in the ABR action plan, but specifically a lack of enforceable policies and not guidelines regarding anti-Black racism. And, we can speak with members of the faculty, members of the equity committee, and we can update the graduate and undergraduate handbook for faculty, but we're updating guidelines. And, while Euc and EUC is updating its policies, I'm actually not too sure exactly what policies specifically are being updated. The policy at York University itself hasn't been updated since the 1990s. I believe it was 1994, and I heard this in passing. But while we know that work is underway, I just want to think about the conflict resolution and mediation systems available to students within that context. For the sake of sakes, go to York Secretary of Policy's website and search race or racism, whichever, and tell me what you find. While you're doing that, we're going to do a couple of contextual exercises that we've been thinking through in 2021, 2022. Specifically, we're going to look at challenges accessing existing enforcement mechanisms for discrimination and or human rights issues. So you're Black and or racialized student, you experience some form of anti-Black and or racism in the class involving both students and faculty, and you want to address it knowing full well you have a couple of years of study to go, and knowing that you want a career after you graduate. This is usually the case, not all the time, but usually. So first you find the Center for Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusion, REI, and the complaints resolution process, while personalized and tailored to the incidents that you've experienced and done so by a complaints resolution officer, it seemingly individualizes the problem, and I'll touch on that in a moment. but it moves it away from any conversation around systems or cultures. And you're not really sure how the process works. So you go to the Black Caucus. The Black Caucus organizes a meeting with the York University Graduate Students Association, the Graduates of Environmental Studies Students Association, to see how this incident could be dealt with and what are the implications. And it's not looking so great. You'd have to confront the faculty member and or student that caused the incident. And you have to remember that you'll be studying with them for another 1 to 4 years. If both faculty and students involved, there's a chance that you might need to launch 2 different complaints for it to be properly addressed. You recognize that you have limited control over who hears and who knows about your case, which means there is a risk of it being publicized. And this was made adamantly clear by Euc. If you choose to publicize your case, you know that there are implications for your future career. When you're Black, you're racialized, you're aware of your playing field, you're paralyzed. So what do? You check out the Office of Student and Community Relations, OSCR, OSCR, but immediately you realize it's a student community and not faculty-related resolution system. So right off the bat, half of what you're concerned about, issues that affect Black and or racialized students that will eventually be in your seat dealing with the same thing might not be addressed. You have the same problems as before, but half the resolve. What do? You can check out the Human Rights Tribunal, but you can tell me how that's different from anything I've mentioned before, but on a larger scale. You think about Professor Avalanto, you think about how both the media and York University's administration managed that incident. It's not looking great. And we're talking about 8 months of steady not greatness as you complete your studies. What do? You look for something anonymous, there's nothing. You look for something specifically within your faculty, you draw up dust. So you work with the Black Caucus to write an open letter to the faculty tracking the issue, and you wait. You wait until you graduate. You wait until you're not paralyzed. You wait as life goes on, as life gets busy. And you wait until you're asking yourself whether you can or still want to access those complaints resolution systems. I would like y'all to think about that and share your thoughts in the chat, help us navigate this issue. And as we move to another brick wall. You're a faculty member, one that's contributed some amazing research to your faculty, but you've been rejected from some promising research positions and or funding opportunities. You're questioning what's going on, but you feel like you know the answer. It's just not quite palpable. But you feel it's bigger, it's broader, might be a system, and you're operating within its structure. One day you get an email, you know your research, you did it, you wrote it, you publicized it, but you get this email. This email asks you to join a group of researchers doing some interesting research that loosely, and I'm going to pause here to note that your research is on, and broadly and for confidentiality purposes, stuff in the Black diaspora. And the research, as outlined in the email, operates within the African diaspora. But it touches on some historically racist and colonizing subcontext that wasn't thought through before they sent the email that you're currently reading. You know the subcontext, you know the historical weight of their research and its affiliation to racist and essentializing dominant narratives that create tropes negatively impacting the global Black community, but Black people particularly in North America and Africa. The people sending the email are, reputable. They're in positions of power. And the best part is the NOI, which I'm actually not too sure what that is. I'm assuming it's the notice of inquiry. But that NOI is due in 7 days. The research has next to nothing to do with yours other than, the Black part. And even that is kind of questionable. You ask yourself, have they read my work? You suddenly realize that you've become a check mark on an EDI checklist to ensure that this group of scholars, and it's a mix of white and racialized scholars, can conduct the research in the African diaspora ethically. Question mark, no, maybe more so properly, but it seems to be more so with your blessing. You reply, your project needs a lot of work as it can be perceived, and let me add emphasis here, as very colonizing, and you respectfully decline, citing that it has nothing to do with your work. You send a confidential email to a few members of the faculty reporting the incident. You have to note not to include particular faculty members because they've yelled at or gaslit you while you were doing service work for the university and they've never apologized. 3 other faculty members confirmed that it was not only racist, but straight up disrespectful, and to think about the deadline. This perversion of EDI culture is leaving a nasty, more palpable, and yet unpalatable taste in your mouth, not only yours. Your colleagues say sorry, they share their similar experiences, and you draft a how to collaborate with scholars from equity deserving groups brief. You reply noting with confidence that this is a structural issue, but the Human Rights Tribunal didn't seem to agree with you. Overall, people seem to be failing at doing the work of protecting you from this kind of shenanigans. Not only that, they're apparently now trying to discredit you. You look back, you see how you were rejected from a promising research position, excluded from promotional opportunities, and then you see the same people that wrote that email occupying those roles later that year. So what do? In almost every part of your job, from your research to your service, you face some form of discrimination. Well, the prudent, conservative, or reasonable step is to leave. And so you do. And after you leave, you reach out to a group of Black students outside of your faculty, the EUC Black Caucus, because you trust them with something that you could only trust 3 other faculty members with. In a university boasting 7,000 staff and professors, you can trust 3 colleagues in the Black Caucus. So I'm going to talk about, and please, again, write in the chat, these are things that we're thinking through. These are things that we're actually working on. But I want to talk about the opportunities where we see, dreams of making opportunities a reality, dreams of making and realizing our goals. And, when I moved to this section, I can't really outline it because it's a lot of work. I'm not getting paid to solve these problems. I work overtime at my part-time job, writing grants just so I could actually get paid. So my job is relatively insecure. But before that, I was working 2 minimum wage jobs on campus because I couldn't get the hours I needed as an undergraduate with either or both of my faculties, including EUC. And to be really clear, I avoided work studies with the faculty because I couldn't get more than 9 hours or so I heard, or more accurately, I couldn't be guaranteed be advertised 10 to 15 hours, and my rent was $600 a month. So 10 hours of $15, I'm at net zero. But hey, I'm thinking about these opportunities because we dream of making a reality some decent paying, and I'm talking at least living wages. If we're talking part-time hours, jobs for students, and that's a start. Whether the work studies, RA shifts, GA shifts, they need to be both for graduate and undergraduate students at the beginning of the pipeline. I didn't apply to scholarships like the HSBC scholarship, even as a member with EUC, with insider knowledge of the fact that few people apply because of my station in life at that point, because of shit like imposter syndrome, because if I cook and serve folks, I'm not too sure if I'm actually worth a random $5,000 scholarship. Is it worth my time? So Black, racialized, and Indigenous scholarships for equity deserving groups, like those proposed in the anti-Black racism framework, they're not really a want, they're a need. It's not just for folks who know that they want to be a scholar, but for folks who don't know that they want to be a scholar, because I didn't know that I wanted to do my master's until I quit one of my jobs. This anonymous complaint resolution system that we thought of, because you can't address what you can't see, or maybe what you don't want to see. Again, it's really a need, it's not a want. We're figuring out ways to do it ourselves, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But also because anti-racism policy and frameworks are entirely performative if students or faculty members can't actually use them. To intentionally sound like a broken record, more Black faculty. Recruitment targeting Black high school students. And if you're asking why, I looked at my cohorts, I look at your classrooms. When I think of my cohort, I immediately fear for the continuity of the Black Caucus. And because more seats at the table with fewer people to fill those seats doesn't just look bad, it's actually detrimental to the perceptions and even more so maybe the meticulously structured reality of the Black Caucus. A clear anti-Black racism policy that we could see on the Secretariat website. I get the action plan, but something enforceable, something visible, something really accessible. Course and curricular audits, which have been mentioned, and I know that they're underway. And I know that it might seem potentially overzealous at some points, as we've learned, but maybe allocate more funds to the auditing process and really care for ensuring that a single or a couple of RAs aren't overburdened, and I'm not saying that they are, but it's just checking that. And the list kind of goes on, and we've covered a lot of them. So I know I'm already over 10 minutes, I'm sorry, but I'll just speak to where we see those dreams becoming a reality. Because we see it happening in spaces like the new advisory committee. Shouts out, it's a great start. It's well-paced, it's well-articulated, helps mitigate some concerns around burnout, and that's genuinely great, like awesome. We see it in working relationships with Black Indigenous elders like Simba Hanley, and we met through the advisory committee, now a member of the Black Caucus. We see it in developing resolution-based systems based on African Indigenous principles, on the principles of Ubuntu, but something that draws from and doesn't replace from this potential anonymous complaints resolution system. We see the opportunity for these dreams to become a reality, and in the care that our dean, and a big shout out, takes to ensure that she can do whatever she can to ease our concerns, to take time out of her day to teach and learn from us. And I see the opportunities in every conversation there. We see it in the anti-Black framework, or anti-Black racism framework itself. And I think of it as a moving object, something towards no indefinite final destination, but rather one whose inertia needs to be maintained and cared for, one who needs support in the form of removing objects or barriers in its path. We see it in the Black Caucus itself. Whether we expand across York, whether we focus on our own backyard, we're thinking through the implications of becoming, for example, an action group with Oprah York. We're thinking about ways to get funding to cover the cost of a website where we can share and publish our works, where we might be able to develop our own anonymous complaints resolution system, and move forward on some of the items that we're speaking about. We see it in developing working agreements with, associations like the York University Black Student Alliance and every other ethnocultural affinity group on campus. We see these opportunities in our being here, in our continued presence despite the despites, and in every single late night conversation, every sip of our self-medicated glass of wine, and in every second that a member of the caucus overcomes burnout or apathy just to be present. And we see it in the next generation and the current generation of EUC Black students, and that's why we need to foster this space for them. So in concluding, I think, why not throw in a shameless plug? We have our membership list there, and I'll copy and paste them in the chat. We also have a supporter list. We have links to our members' projects. I want to highlight Camille and Natalie's websites at CamilleTurner.com and IamNatalieWood.com. There's some work that I'm doing that's there as well, but we also have the social media plugs, and I'll put them into the website. But I think it is time for a little bit of Q&A. So thank you so much, y'all.
Thank you so much, Camille. Thank you, Nati, and thank you, Natalie. That was a lot of important information that you've shared, a lot of challenges, a lot of wins, and a lot of concerns as well. I know we have 10 minutes left on this call, so I just want to open up the floor for any questions, for any comments, for any concerns, and we can take from there. And please use the raise hand function if you want to say something. Yes, and yes, the slides will be made available, and we'll share that around. Okay, so we have, so we have Dean. Dean Alice, you can go ahead, and then we'll have Professor Ellie go next.
Lovely, thank you. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of work and time and energy and passion that the EUC Black Caucus has put not only into this presentation, this is the tip of the iceberg, but everything that you have been doing to tackle anti-Black racism and to ensure Black inclusion for our students, for our faculty, for our staff, and for our community at large. So congratulations and a huge amount of gratitude going your way. And I really do appreciate the spirit with which you bring your demands and the pressure and the continuing pressure. And I think that is your role, and that needs to be done. At the same time, we all need to put pressure upon ourselves and demand of ourselves, working our way through these issues. So I would say I too am dedicated to good trouble. Even though I'm the dean, I'm in a place where I am the system, and I appreciate that that my position is one that is tricky because there's a tendency to reproduce the system when you're in it. I was struck a long time ago, 2 years now, when you shared with me this, what you stated as, if it's for us, it must be with us. And so my question to you is, how can we work together? And we've been building trust, and we've been building responsiveness and dialogue, and for that I'm very grateful. But I do wonder how we can work together within EUC. There's lots of things going on. Do you have any, and I appreciate that you're seeing some of the avenues like the advisory committee as some good channels of communication. Are there any other takeaways for how we might together work towards systemic change? Because often it's pitched as a demands to the dean or demands on the system. I totally get that, and that is appropriate. But how do we work collectively? If there's any insights or any requests to that end, I'm all ears. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Dean. Maybe we'll allow Professor Perkins to go next, and then someone from the Black Caucus can respond.
Thank you very much. I think these presentations are stupendous, and I feel like there's a map in front of us now with signposts and goalposts and all kinds of indications about that so we can hopefully see bit by bit how we're moving forward, and that's never existed before in this faculty. There's been lots of efforts over time, and as I think Natalie said, what about, where did they disappear without a trace, without a ripple? Like, where are they all? So one of my questions is, at one point on the FES website before the merger, there were a lot of anti-racism resources that had been developed by the Equity Committee. And I don't know what happened to those. I hope they are still available somehow, because when the website was redeveloped for the new faculty, I don't know where they went. I might have some of them on my computer, but it would be great if those resources could become part of an ongoing sort of compendium. Of course, things get outdated over time, but if they can't be on the new faculty's website in a place that indicates that the faculty is in fact welcoming and has a place for people who are concerned about these things, then maybe those resources could be available to the Black Caucus or to some other group. But I don't want them to just have disappeared, because it took a lot of time and many years for the Equity Committee to actually assemble all of that. It included also the annual report of the Equity Committee, which is an interesting sort of document because it shows the progressions over time. Like, there were a few years there where we were just focused on anti-Islamic and Islamophobia. And so there have been many issues, and so their interrelationship is also interesting to trace. So that's one question. I just wanted to say something about Dorsida Taylor. She was actually the first choice of the hiring committee, and that was at a time when our dean was born in Jamaica, David Bell. And she wasn't hired because, maybe this is betraying confidences, I don't know, but it's a long time ago now, so I'm just gonna go ahead with it. Her husband also was applied for a job at York, and she couldn't come. He's Canadian, I believe, but she was not, there was no spousal hiring that was possible. So I'm raising this because I totally agree. Wouldn't it be amazing if Dorsey, she might be Dean Alice, sorry, but it would be fabulous if we had been able to hire her. And it was a source of great disappointment for many of us in the faculty. And it indicates that there are situations around hiring which require a bit more flexibility and the ability of the administration to pull whatever strings or open whatever doors or make it possible for the people that the hiring committee wants, that most of the faculty wants, not to be blocked by something that could be seen as a ceiling, right? Or a floor, or what, a barrier. So I don't know if that's really a question, but it's a remark, and maybe Alice has some comments about how we can mobilize within this faculty to open some of those doors. I don't know. And then the final thing I want to say is to pick up on one of the points that was raised about opening doors for people in the Jane Finch community within our faculty. You probably know that there was a transition year program that the UFA Community Projects Committee sponsored and paid for through UFA dues for several years, and it has not been continued or supported. And one of the big blocks all along the way was that York didn't give tuition waivers or any kind of tuition support to people from the local community, the community that York is actually a part of. Now, that is a York-wide thing. It doesn't have to do with just our faculty, but I'm wondering what I would like to, have a discussion or raise the issue of whether we can, in fact, do something at the faculty level that would support student applicants at all three levels in all of our programs from the Jane Finch community. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Prof. Perkins. Camille, Natalie, anyone want to respond?
Can I go first,
Sure.
folks? Yeah. Okay. So, Dean, you mentioned, your question was, how do we work collectively? Right. I think it really is. I think it's really incumbent upon us to look at best practices out there in the world. And what we've identified as best practices is the OCADU approach to systems change, right? And that is systems change, right? Not inclusion into a culture that is problematic, or inclusion into a vision that is still centered in whiteness, right? So we've talked about this before, and we really, I don't know how, you've heard us speak about this before, and I know that you are working with what you have, and you are, committed to making this change. However, the reality, research, lots of research, we could go across the world and find this research, that it's important to have someone at the top who completely understands the experience, right? And is also attached to money. Then you've got to have in the middle people who are influencers. And then you've got to connect with the folks at the students who are struggling through, barriers and the kind of like the nettle stings. I'm using like a nature kind of metaphor, because it in very many respects, it feels like the natural living experiences. Like it's so embedded, it is, you can't see it, right? But for some of us, we feel it. So to, I'm going to push you, like, and I'm speaking as a Black Caucus member, but I'm also an individual person who has done a lot of work at George Brown College around systems change. And this educational system refuses to change. And so if it does, who are the people, Dean, that you are relying upon to give you that information? It can't just be us, because we are still trying to sort it through, right? And in relying on us, I don't think that this is going to pass any ethics review, right? Because if you're doing evidence-based research and evidence-based action, right? How are you doing this with us? Like, right? Because, there is a level of frustration that we have, that now we are being put in the position of the go-between, right? So students come and complain to us, faculty are coming and complaining to us, because there is nothing that is there for them to be able to make that change effectively. So if all of that is, and all the knowledge, all of the system, like all of the research is, I was reading something recently by Ronaldo Walcott about EDI, and how EDI, it is about inclusion into a system that refuses to change. So if that's the case, there's not going to be any change. There's going to be theater, right, and roles and performances until this group leaves, kind of like ACE, and then it's going to disappear. And it happened at George Brown College too. It just disappeared, right? Carl James was working with George Brown College, and then all of a sudden, nothing that we had done exists anymore, right? So I think moving into this world where we're in a pandemic, the Anthropocene is present, we don't know if, we're gonna, the planet is struggling, that we need to be more innovative, which means that we need to take risks. And the risk can't only be on our backs. It cannot be us alone, because we're burning out. We're burning out. I should have been spending time working on my program plan last night. Instead, I was putting together a PowerPoint, which then will be used by EUC, put on a website, you know, presented as EUC is doing a really, really good job. Look at what we've done. Look at who we've, right? And it will become performative, because there will not be the change. So, you know, some of the things that we talked about, and Carl James talked about this, and he really insisted, we need to have someone who has been through this process, who has knowledge, who can actually guide us, right? Because we are stumbling through the dark, all of us, like the Black Caucus, right? And there are things that we will forget, or things that we will not see. I know I'm going on and on and on, but you know, how do we do this respectfully, right? How do we truly not make sure that our efforts are not in vain? Means that we have to take risks. And so to the Dean, I hear what Ellie has to say about, you know, things disappearing off of websites. That will happen. That constantly happens unless you've got people in top with the money, the influences in the middle, actually seeing this as a priority. Okay, and you can't have influences unless you've got someone coming in and working, having conversations with faculty and staff so that they can become champions, and it doesn't fall only on students. Okay, so I'll say that. I know there's more to say. So yeah, Nafi or Camille, if you want to add.
Yeah, thanks so much, Natalie. I know I wish we could take another 30 minutes, but I'm conscious of time. Just to wrap up, any members of the caucus want to say something? Any reactions, maybe from the Dean or any other people, and then we can wind up.
So, Maureen here, Jen.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Nati, Camille, Natalie. Amazing presentation. I just kind of want to add one thing about, I think even just responding to collectively working and together, and the role that the students that work together, the committee and the Black Caucus puts in. One of the things that it's really risky work, because as we've all said, we are still working within these systems. We are still working within systems that are colonizing, systems that are racist. And when we keep doing this job, I think the biggest risk is we have to keep pushing back. We have to keep, as students, resisting. But the risks we are taking, and as Natalie said, it's not just about not spending enough time doing our schoolwork. It's the risks that we are taking, that it's the same people we are pushing back at that we'll need to apply for jobs from when we graduate. It's the same people that we are pushing back against that we need to reach out to support us build our careers or funding and everything. And it's a risk we keep taking every day. Like, this is just doing this work, apart from being emotional labor, is a direct route to unemployment. And we keep doing it because we have hope for the future. But for the system to change, we need to know that we are safe and that our safety is guaranteed, that the work we do is not used to penalize us, to punish us in future or at this time. I think for me, that is one issue that we need to talk about. The safety in doing this work in a system that refuses to change.
Thanks, Maureen. Any quick reactions? I know, Simba, can you quickly just say something quickly? I know your hand has been up for quite some time, and then that will be the last question, and then we can, maybe the Dean can respond and we can wrap up.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that in order for systems to change, systems have to adopt. at Dalhousie, sorry about that, they're doing some alarms in my home. Dalhousie University and McMaster University both have centers for human rights and restorative justice to address these concerns. What I'm challenging our faculty to do is to have a center for anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism in the faculty so that you could employ people from the community objectively to work so that we will be safe, so that they could safely advocate for students, faculty, and staff who have experienced that. But we absolutely need a center, right? We need a department in the faculty or on campus that addresses anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Simba. Any last responses? No? No? Okay. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I'm sure it was a hard conversation, but a very necessary one. And we want to thank the Dean and the Equity Committee for enabling us to host this dialogue. Thank you very much. And we will definitely take back this information, these concerns, and see how to move them forward in a manner that is respectful and a manner that addresses what we have discussed today to ensure that Black people are respected not only in the faculty, but at Euc. So thank you very, very much, everyone. I will share the slides, and the meeting has been recorded, and I will share that as well.
So Jane, maybe we can hear from Alice.
Oh, sorry, Dean, I didn't see your hand was up. Okay, yes, yeah, please, Dean, please go ahead and just help us wrap up.
Yes, of course. I will wrap up by again thanking the EUC Black Caucus and especially Maureen and Natalie and Natty and yourself, Jane, for this particular dialogue. There are a couple of things that this has really helped me work through. Thinking about this collaborative piece and that it should not fall back to the EUC Black Caucus. I'm really appreciative of that point. To that end, I'm going to reach out, and thank you for Dory Tunstall's name through OCAD. I'm going to reach out to her as well as Carl James. I chat with him quite regularly on this. I've also been in conversation with Simba Handley, who just shared his thoughts around some broader frameworks that we might be able to work within, sort of around restorative practice that he's been championing and using his own expertise as Afro-Indigenous elder at Jane Finch. So there's a number of avenues that I want to be exploring there. And I also really appreciate the comment around the accountability in the Black Inclusion Action Plan. I get, I put down the comment that they're and I agree, they're pretty words at the moment. And I think there's something about accounting for success and what are the metrics and how do we actually make that work. It's something that is in conversation at Euc more broadly, but something I wanted to pin down in terms of our own action plan. So stay tuned. Again, I also really appreciate the energy and emotional toll that these conversations take on, in particular, those who are in a system that has not been built by them or for them. So thank you again for this conversation, and to be continued.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Okay, yes, thank you very much, our speakers, Camille, Natalie, and Natty. Thank you very much, faculty, dean, and all the students for taking your time to join us this morning. I know we've gone way over time, but just thank you very much. And yes, have a good day, and thank you.
Thank you so much, folks. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.